as we've all sort of talked about, as we've done the readings and done some of the historical background of how and sort of why Brautigan's life was what it was, you sort of start to look at his novels, which is mostly what I'm talking about. And they're all set in California. They're all first-person narratives. They're all very much the same, and it's all very clear, at least to me, that he is the narrator. I mean, he has an ability to expose himself that's naive, and it's still funny and scathingly self-critical at times, and sometimes a little bit mean, a little bit wry. I mean, he really was, to me, the transition between the beat poets and a more modern age of poetry and literature. He wasn't Bukowski. He didn't hate women. He was a nice guy, so to speak. He was a drunk. He had psychological problems, but he was a nice guy. And he painted with the way that he chose words. As I said before, he managed to describe places and people in ways that you could so easily identify them, even though the descriptions were so short and sparse. I mean, when I saw the Presidio Library, I knew that was the library, and there's no way to tell. I mean, in his book, the Abortion, he doesn't go through and describe, the tile patterns or go through this whole detail of, the Carnegie library systems or anything. He has a bunch of very simple descriptions of the library. Basically, the yard's going to hell, and it's a stone building. But that's what it is. You can feel that's what it is in your heart, which is one of the reasons that I love him. He found a way to sort of write about every man and every place at the same time in the old traditional way. He reminds me a lot of Sherwood Anderson, who was one of my favorite other authors, who wrote the Winesburg, Ohio book, and Thornton Wilder, even with Our Town, where he talks about people and places we know, but we're not so sure we want to know them any better, or that we want to go back and see them again. He really sort of just describes what's going on without having a lot of like the sort of gritty Steinbeck kind of the world is cruel stuff. It's all there. It's all knocking at the door. You can tell that it's out there, but it's not exactly what he's writing about. As I've said, The Abortion is one of my favorite books, regardless of the critics. It's particularly poignant when you consider exactly what the book is about. It's about a library where authors come in and leave their books. They're not checked out again. They're not particularly cataloged. It's simply a repository in many ways. It's sort of like the island of misfit toys. I mean, it's works that are either the author is too shy to even think about ever getting them published. They're horrible. They're written on leather. They're written in crayon. They're misfits. They're for whatever reason, there's something fatally flawed about the books, not the people. And in many ways, that's what this book is about as well, is the concept that a thing can be fatally flawed, and a person can escape that flaw within themselves by writing about it and putting it on a shelf. And that's what the gig was, is you'd come in with your book and you'd talk about it with the librarian as much as you wanted to, or he wanted to, and he would sort of feel you out, and then you could put it on any shelf you wanted to, and it would stay there. Eventually, as the library got full, the fat old hippie would take them and store them in the cave, which I always thought was a reference to Kerouac, but I have no idea because I'm not that smart. But it was a way for authors to sort of like let their children go. It's one of the hardest things about being creative, is feeling like something's done and then being able to let it go and send it out into the world. With this library, you could have that sense of completion, and it was out in the world, but you weren't at so much risk. I was going to read some more, but I think that the coolest thing are the descriptions of the books that are placed in the library, and it's one of my favorite sections of this. So this is from The Abortion. We're going to start with the 23. one of the books that is deposited in the library is My Trike by Chuck. The author was 5 years old and had a face that looked as if it had been struck by a tornado of freckles. There was no title on the book and no words inside, just pictures. "What's the name of your book?" I said. The little boy opened the book and showed me the drawing of a tricycle. It looked more like a giraffe standing upside down in an elevator. "That's my trike," he said. "Beautiful," I said. "And what's your name?" "That's my trike." "Yes," I said, "very nice, but what's your name?" "Chuck." He reached the book up onto the desk and then headed for the door, saying, "I have to go now. My mother's outside with my sisters." I was going to tell him that he could put the book on any shelf he wanted to, but by then he was gone in his own small way. Another one of my favorite authors that shows up is A History of Nebraska by Clinton York. The author was a gentleman about 47 who said he had never been to Nebraska, but he had always been interested in the state. "Ever since I was a child, it's been Nebraska for me." Other kids listened to the radio or raved on about their bicycles. I read everything I could find on Nebraska. I don't know what got me started on the thing, but anyway, this is the most complete history ever written about Nebraska. The book was in 7 volumes, and he had them in a shopping bag when he came into the library. And finally, one of the sort of more awesome contributions of one of the books that gets left on the shelf is Moose by Richard Brautigan. The author was tall and blond and had a long yellow mustache that gave him an anachronistic appearance. He looked as if he would be more at home in another era. This was the 3rd or 4th book he had brought to the library. Every time he brought in a new book, he looked a little older, a little more tired. He looked quite young when he brought in his first book. I can't remember the title of it, but it seems to me that the book had something to do with America. "What's this one about?" I asked, because he looked as if he wanted me to ask him something. "Just another book," he said. I guess I was wrong about him wanting me to ask him something. And this is what I find so charming about this whole concept of figuring out how people could just leave their babies and in a comfortable way. And it's ironic, obviously, because he did have so many problems getting the abortion published. It was 3 or 4 years of him hawking it to his publishers, and it was until the hippies had picked him up and started buying his earlier novels that anybody was willing to pay him for the abortion. And one of the books, of course, is one of the final books he places on the shelf before the librarian's life moves on, is The Need for Legalized Abortion by Dr. O. The author was doctory and very nervous in his late 30s. The book had no title on the cover. The contents were very neatly typed, about 300 pages long. "It's all I can do," he said. "Do you want to put it on the shelf yourself?" "No, you can take care of that yourself. There's nothing else I can do. It's all a goddamn shame." It started to rain outside the library. I could hear it splash against the windows and echo among the books. They seem to know it's raining here in the beautiful darkness of lives as I wait for Vida. It's such a simple book that I hate to give away the plot, so to speak, because it is interesting. But one of the things that's so cool about the abortion is the way he describes things. We drove down to Visadero. I used to be able to say that word. To Visadero, so someone insert it pronounced correctly, and saw a man washing the windows of a funeral parlor with a garden hose. He was spraying the hose against the second floor windows. It was not a normal thing to see early in the morning. At the airport restaurant, there were Negro men in white uniforms doing the cooking while wearing tall white hats, but there were no Negroes in the restaurant eating. I guess Negroes don't take airplanes early in the morning. I mean, his sense of irony and the way that he can just describe something without using, the words that lead you to an opinion. He lets you make your opinion. I mean, you don't get, slammed into something. Or as I said, his art lies in possibilities, not in judgments or moral values, which is what I love. And I also love the library, which actually is a very real thing. After the abortion was published, there have been a series of curators of the library. It finally settled in, I think in Oregon, but it began in Burlington, Vermont, And the concept was to recreate Brautigan's library, is to basically let people bring books in and put them on the shelves as they chose. And that's all that happened, is that sense of completeness for the author, and the sense of history and collection for the book itself. The library went through some bad times here and there with money and stuff, but that's sort of not the point. The cool thing is that it is cataloged by what they call the mayonnaise system, which is based in part on trout fishing in America in the last chapter there, and what they used in the library and the abortion to separate the sections of books. They just used mayonnaise jars. So they call the cataloging system the mayonnaise system. As it stands now, the library is in the Clark County Historical Museum, and they are not accepting any more written works, but they are accepting digital works, which is I think, very, very cool, and is maintaining the whole mystery of what he was about to me. The mayonnaise system headings are what I love. They're adventure. There are 25 adventure books. There are 44 books cataloged under all the rest. There are 25 books about family, 19 about humor, some about the future, love, the meaning of life, the natural world. There are 47 books of poetry, 55 books on social or political issues, some on spirituality and street life, and some on war and peace. One of the books that's in the current new library was written by Leo Wiltz, and the title of the book is Strive for Mediocrity, Even If It's Beyond You. It's the story of a 75-year-old grandfather who, if asked if you had to live your life over, said, "I'd want to do it all over again." And that's all I got. I truncated. In the interest of rain and time.
Yes, we have a major downpour headed this way.
That's what I was afraid of.